and welcome to Agrino News. My name is Chakos, and I'll be your host for this segment. Today's subject, the Cypriot Presidential Elections of 2023. Being politically informed in Cyprus is not an easy task. The majority of young people have no interest in politics and have no idea who the current presidential candidates are or what they stand for. So most of them end up not voting at all. Same goes for anyone who doesn't speak Greek. In a predominantly Greek-speaking country like Cyprus, everything from news outlets to political debates to even presidential campaign websites are all exclusively in Greek, leaving everyone else that doesn't speak the language in the dark. Here at Agrino News, we took it upon ourselves to help people understand who is who in this election process and what they stand for, by doing a thorough analysis of the main candidates, their backgrounds, and their positions on important issues concerning Cyprus. So, let's begin. Here are the main candidates for the presidency. Nikos Christodoulidis, supported by Diko, EDEK, DIPA, Solidarity Movement, and Hunters Movement. Averof Neophytou, supported by DC. Andreas Mavrogiannis, nominated by AGEL and supported by Allagi Genias. And Achilleas Dimitriadis, supported by Famagousta for Cyprus. If no one receives more than 50% on the first round of elections, a second election will be held a week later, on the 12th of February, between the top two contenders. Now, let's have a closer look at our candidates. First up, Nikos Christodoulidis, a lifelong public servant who served as a diplomat for the Cypriot government and was appointed in positions within the administration of Nikos Anastasiadis. Highlight of his career was his appointment as press secretary in 2014, and then as foreign minister from 2018 until his resignation in January 2022. Through his work in the government, he gained wide recognition and had high approval ratings from the public. Even though he has maintained the image of a good guy, his political opponents don't miss the opportunity to challenge this idea by pointing out glaring cracks in that image. Specifically, throughout the books of Makarios Drouchotis, Nikos Christodoulidis is described as the president's right-hand man and fixer, who was privy to a lot of inside information. Drouchotis, a former aide to the president, worked closely with both the president and Christodoulidis, and subsequently quit the government and went on to write 3 tell-all books describing events that exposed the government and its cabinet members, mostly concerning internal affairs and the Cyprus talks. The president and his government are also linked to multiple scandals: golden passports, illegal naturalizations, the collapse of the Cyprus solution in 2017, and accommodating the interests of local and foreign entities, predominantly Russian oligarchs. Another thing Christodoulidis is criticized for is his hesitation to differentiate his position from the government of Nikos Anastasiadis and avoids calling it corrupt, even though 70% of the public believe the current government is. This strengthens the idea that Nikos Christodoulidis is indeed the president's chosen one to be next in line. Averof Neophytou is a veteran politician and a party bureaucrat. Throughout his career, he was either appointed or elected by his party to varying positions. He served as Minister of Transportation and Communications in the Kliridis administration from 1999 to 2003, and was elected as a Member of Parliament for DC, the biggest party in Cyprus, of which he then became president in 2013. He is considered a liberal and is known by his ability to solve problems and secure parliament majorities to pass reforms. Neophytou has rightfully earned the title of a doer through his political career. He is also not one to shy away from taking responsibility in bad times, regardless of whether he is actually the one to blame. But, in the eyes of the average voter, Averof Neophytou is more responsible for the current problems Cyprus is facing than even the president. Despite serving alongside the current president for many years, it is rumored that he's not actually Nikos Anastasiadis' chosen one to succeed him as president, but rather Nikos Christodoulidis, whom he supports behind the scenes. Averof publicly asked the president to make his position clear, forcing him to pick a side, The president then, somewhat reluctantly, got involved with the Neophytus campaign and showed some signs of support, but the obvious lack of enthusiasm was unconvincing to the public. Andreas Mavroyiannis is an independent candidate supported by AKEL. As someone who is supported by AKEL, naturally his candidacy is followed by the suspicion of the average Cypriot voter that AKEL is incapable of governing, especially in matters of finance. Because of that, his campaign tried its best to differentiate him from the party that supports him, declaring that he is not a left-wing politician and that none of his political positions are dictated by AKEL. To balance out any reactions from the party, he clarifies that his political beliefs are based on humanism and derived from the French school of thinking. Humanism predicates that the starting point to any political discussion is the people, how to improve their lives, and how to make the world a better place. Mavroyiannis also spent his career as a public servant, a member of the diplomatic corps of the Republic of Cyprus, and a former chief negotiator for the Cyprus problem, who was trusted by most presidents throughout the years. Highlight of his career was his appointment as State Secretary of European Affairs in 2011 by then-President Dimitris Christofias, where Cyprus managed the EU presidency with great success. Mavroyiannis doesn't lead a public life and generally keeps a low profile. Occasionally, you could catch him on TV talking about the Cyprus problem. He essentially exposed himself to the limelight in 2022 with his candidacy for president. He declares he is without any personal political ambitions and that if his presidential bid fails, he will withdraw from politics once and for all. The decision to run for president is purely driven by his concern for the country. Lastly, Achilleas Dimitriadis is a lawyer specializing in intellectual property and human rights, and is a truly independent candidate. He has very little chance of winning the presidency, but he will play an important role during the second round of elections, when he will have to give his support to one of the two frontrunners winning the first round. Highlights of his career: the case of Modinos against Cyprus in 1993, where as the lawyer of Mr. Alekos Modinos in the European Court of Human Rights paved the way for the decriminalization of homosexuality in Cyprus, and the case of Titina Loizidou, in which again he won the action against Turkey in the European Court of Human Rights. With that win, he ensured reparations for the deprivation of property, as well as the right to have that property returned, which was lost during the Turkish invasion of Cyprus. The outcome of that case will play a major role into how the properties of refugees will be dealt with in the case of a political solution. These are the four candidates, of which one will become president of the Republic of Cyprus in the next month. But what are really their positions on the major issues concerning Cypriots? And what, if anything, do they plan to do to change the status quo on those issues? Let's start with the economy. The 2012-2013 Cypriot financial crisis has dominated the country's economic affairs in recent times. In March 2013, the Cypriot government reached an agreement with its Eurozone partners, which resulted in Laiki Bank closing down and being partly absorbed by the larger Bank of Cyprus. In return for a 10 billion bailout, the Cypriot government was required to impose a significant haircut on uninsured deposits. After a 3.5-year recession, Cyprus returned to growth in the first quarter of 2015 and successfully concluded its 3-year financial assistance program at the end of March 2016. The quick economic recovery was driven by tourism, business services, and increased consumer spending. In 2022, the Cypriot economy experienced a strong growth rate of approximately 6%, presenting a pleasant surprise after the Ministry of Finance's initial estimates of 2.7%. Christodoulidis has stated that he will be continuing the financial policies of the current government and preferred to speak in vague terms and broad ideas instead of presenting a concrete financial plan. The parties that support him, on the other hand, have very different positions regarding the economy than the current government. An important split between the allies was the vote on suspending property divestments, which is essentially a measure to block the banks from selling mortgaged properties that are unpaid. All parties, except DC, voted for an extension to the suspension until the 31st of January 2023. Under pressure, Christodoulidis separated his position from the party supporting him on the subject. Averos Neophytou is considered the most knowledgeable in matters of economy, and he has openly stated that his opponents are amateurs in finance and questioned their ability to understand economics. He is aligned against the divestment suspension, together with his party, the C, and characterized the move as a dangerous backsliding to the economy. He has also stated that the current finance minister will continue serving under his administration in case he is elected in office, and that there will be a continuation of the current economic model, which yielded a 6% growth. Mavroyiannis has declared that his views on financial matters do not align with Agel, and his finance minister will not be from Agel. Despite that, he did agree with Agel's position to vote for the suspension of divestments. Dimitriadis' views on the economy are self-described as liberal, where a competitive economy that ensures the good of the people and their needs is a priority. On the subject of divestments, he stated that he disagrees with the suspension. Next up, healthcare. Cyprus's universal healthcare system, YESI, launched on June 1st, 2019. As of June 2022, 917,000 Cypriots have registered with the general practitioner through the YESI system, which is roughly the current population of the Republic of Cyprus. Christodoulidis stated that he is a big supporter of YESI and has laid out a plan on how to improve it, focusing on serving patients and boosting the quality of service provided. One thing to consider is that one of the parties supporting Christodoulidis, EDEC, supports more radical changes than the ones proposed by Christodoulidis, and depending on how much power that party has in the government, some of those changes could eventually be part of the reforms. Averos Neophytou has also pledged improvements to YESI, but he has in the past been against it being implemented. One reform that is expected with an Averos presidency is the switch from a single-payer to a multi-payer insurance system. Conversely, Mavroyiannis and Dimitriadis both support the single-payer insurance system and promise better checks and balances and an improvement on the current services. Technology. For the past few years, a lot of effort has been made to transform Cyprus into a tech island. The number of tech companies making Cyprus their home has been growing rapidly, and so has their influence and lobbying power. The position of most presidential candidates is more or less the same in terms of technology, where all of them are interested in a digital government, modern digital infrastructures, mobile apps for public services, and other varying platitudes that describe a cutting-edge society, but none of them have any concrete plans on how to get there. Another thing that's missing from all agendas are any specific tax reforms that will make Cyprus an attractive place for startup companies. So, even though the will to move forward is there, the vision is not, and neither is the knowledge on these matters. So overall, technology is not a differentiating issue for the candidates. And now, on corruption. The overwhelming perception in Cyprus is that corruption is widespread, with political parties and the healthcare system seen as particularly vulnerable to abuse of power. The books by Makarios Roussotis describe in detail the many acts of corruption the current president and his administration did. Nikos Christodoulidis agrees there is a corruption problem in Cyprus, but he does not believe the current government is part of it and prefers to lay blame elsewhere in society. Averos Neophytou is considered to be part of the corrupted political system, the political elite, which the people of Cyprus find it difficult to trust or relate to. Even though corruption exists in all levels of government and almost all positions of power, Averos Neophytou shoulders the vast number of negative comments and allegations regarding corruption. He denies the allegations and asks that if someone has any proof that he is corrupt, to provide them in public, while he underlines that the new government shall fight corruption by applying constitutional reforms. He believes that corruption will never stop existing, but it can be controlled. Andreas Mavroyiannis, on the other hand, is not burdened by any corruption allegations, as the other two main candidates. And even though he has been a close affiliate to Nikos Anastasiadis, he was never part of his appointed administration. As a matter of fact, he went a step further and sent a letter to the president of the Independent Anti-Corruption Authority to look into Makarios Drouchotis' claims that the president is connected to and serves the interests of the Russian oligarch Dmitry Rubolovlev. Achilleas Dimitriadis is also someone that has a clean sheet on corruption, and his take on how to tackle it is to have a state where everything is automated and all systems and procedures are monitored. Another change he considers essential is to change the institution of Advocate General and separate its role into two, so that the legal counsel of the government is not the same person as the supervisor for criminal prosecution. And finally, the Cyprus problem. Since the illegal invasion of Cyprus by Turkey in 1974 and the continuing occupation of a third of the island until this day, the Cyprus problem has been one of the most important issues for Cypriots. In recent years, there have been many efforts to solve the issue, but there was always something that went wrong in the end. The latest attempt took place in Crans-Montana, where the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, presented the Guterres Framework, which was a proposal that consisted of 6 points that were the main conclusions of the negotiations, that could be adopted and would regulate a final solution. Cypriot President Nikos Anastasiadis, concerned more about his re-election than negotiating a solution, decided that it was more beneficial for him to aim for a collapse of the talks, in which he eventually succeeded. And instead, it is rumored that he proposed a two-state solution to Turkey's foreign minister. This was the closest the two sides came to a solution, especially since this was the first time Turkey had agreed to abolishing guarantees under certain conditions. But once again, that did not come to pass, and it can be largely credited to Nikos Anastasiadis and his administration. Christodoulidis played a crucial role during Crans-Montana as the government's spokesman, and according to the books of Makarios Drouchotis, who was part of the negotiating team at the time, he was the one carrying out Anastasiadis' strategy of pushing for a collapse of the talks. While in the past he was praising the UN Secretary General and extolling the content of the Guterres Framework, he now says that if elected, he will renegotiate it. He then became Foreign Affairs Minister, where for almost 4 years there was no progress in trying to restart the negotiations. Now he states that if he becomes president, he will try to remove the stalemate and start a new effort to come to a solution, despite his inability to do so before. Through his tenure as foreign minister, Turkey proceeded to open up part of the closed-out city of Famagusta. Before that happened, Christodoulidis played down the threats made by Turkey as nothing more than fireworks. The lack of action led to Turkey making those threats a reality, leaving Cyprus once again in a position of weakness. Averof Neophytou did publicly condemn Nikos Christodoulidis' handling of the Crans-Montana talks, and stated that he would have signed the Guterres Framework as is. He understands that a dead end to the process is very dangerous and promises renewed efforts to restart the negotiations. Averof and his party as a whole supported bizonal bicommunal federation. He states that Cyprus is a country that belongs in the Western world and that he also supports the admission of Cyprus to NATO, even though with Turkey in NATO that is simply a pipe dream with no real chance of ever happening. Mavroyiannis stated that the first thing he'll do if he wins the presidency is to send a message of peace to our fellow Turkish Cypriot compatriots and start again the process of trying to solve the Cyprus problem and continue the negotiations where they left off at Crans-Montana. He believes our only options are either a solution to the problem or partition, with whatever that entails. He said that he would have signed the Guterres Framework. The primary message of Achilleas Dimitriadis' campaign is a solution to the Cyprus problem is beneficial to everyone. He believes the need for a solution is non-negotiable. He supports a bizonal, bicommunal federation and wants the Guterres Framework to be implemented. His main supporter, the movement Famagusta for Cyprus, was created due to the lack of resistance from the Cyprus establishment on the opening of the closed-off area of Arosha. So, these are the presidential candidates and their positions. Yeah, they're not really exciting or modern or revolutionary, and none of them really inspires people to go out and vote. But you should do it regardless. Do not let incompetent leaders come to power again because you didn't speak up when you had the chance. So go out and vote. Until next time.